Blog Talk Radio.
This is Boston Red for Boston Red on the World on the 17th day of June 2012. We had the Greek elections today, anticlimactic. This is BR on the World. Boston Red here on the 22nd day of January 2013, the day after the inaugural address of President Barack Hussein Obama. We've titled this episode, Dr. King and President Obama. We are making the historical connection between Dr. King and his civil rights movement and also his efforts to end the Vietnam War. President Obama struggled with similar circumstances in ending about to end two conflicts, one in Iraq, the second in Afghanistan that will end this year primarily. It's the same thing that that Dr. King stated at the Riverside Church in New York when he ventured into something that many at the time felt that he should not be in. It was called American foreign policy. The war in what at one time was labeled Indochina, a policy that was an antique policy, a policy that was a Neanderthal policy. President Obama faces the same calamities today. He talked about the collective wisdom of the American people and collective action of the American people, and was immediately criticized by right-wingers, particular one, Jennifer Rubin. She's in the Washington Post, the newspaper in the capital, Washington, D.C., that does not have a vote in Congress. Rubin assaulted his speech talking about America free enterprise. What Rubin doesn't comprehend is, why does American business have the Chamber of Commerce? Why does American business have various organizations like the Business Roundtable, etc.? The reason there is they have to take collective action to further their interests. The president looked at climate change and things that will affect the global atmosphere. The same thing they'll be talking about in Davos, Switzerland today, and all of this week as they meet in Davos. Many people will be there, Bill Clinton, etc. We'll cover that on Boston Red, also on Numbers Man, the other program. But nonetheless, the president's themes today: progress. Progress does not wait. Action has to be taken. Is what one writer at the Washington Post called a speech that progressives have been waiting to hear. He talked about inclusiveness in the American society from African Americans, obviously the struggle of Dr. King, to our gay Americans, where that should be, and also back to this climate change, more of a topic there, the idea of dealing with deficits and continuation of what is called the social net. He mentioned the poor, much to chagrin, no doubt, of people like the Tavis Smiley, a national capitulator, and his associate Uncle Cornel West. They became more relevant today than they were the day before. Thus, the winds have changed, time has changed, the economy has some renewal out there. The Republicans in Congress offered basically a 90-day plan to move with the deficit. The problem is it's a temporary fix, and it has all kinds of, as one would say, attachments to it, strings attached. And the Speaker of the House, Boehner, is trying to be Pinocchio. He's trying to pull strings. Harry Reid in the Senate should not tolerate this type of activity. It should go out with the proverbial Etzel. That was the car that Willard Romney's fellow automobile manufacturer was actually by Ford, but nonetheless, Romney had the Rambler, etc. That was American Motors. They are gone too. and Willard's pumped his own gas somewhere out in Southern California. He had envisioned himself being there today on the steps of the Capitol taking the oath. That did not happen. His ideas did not catch enough fire, although they caught some fire. And the President addressed that, as you will hear coming up here shortly, what the President had to say. We start with James Taylor and end with Beyonce, Knowles, as she takes us out of here. This is a broadcast. It's sort of between broadcasts that would have been today, but it is actually occurring early Tuesday morning. And on Boston Red, we'll have Dr. King and the gun movement, rights movement. We'll talk about that. That program was originally scheduled on Sunday. We had technical difficulties, so we'll be moving along here. We'll also be live streaming on Boston Red TV today, early morning, one of the two. So we are in action here. We are moving right along, and at the same time, the Inaugural Committee has their balls. They're going on in D.C. They had the parade. They've had activities the whole week as we celebrate both the inauguration of President Obama and the legacy of Dr. King. Myrlie Evers was there. She gave the invocation, the first woman and the non-lay type to do that. Her husband, of course, was gunned down by reactionaries in the very red state of Mississippi. The racists killed Medgar Evers, but they did not kill Medgar Evers' dream nor Medgar Evers' work. His wife stands there at the inauguration of an African-American president that was re-elected, a long ways from the day that the apartheid types in Mississippi were using violence to intimidate people and kill people. That day has gone, but the racism, crass racism, is still in Mississippi and still across the nation in too many places. Now we have to have action to rectify it 1 inch at a time, one state at a time, one city, one town, one hamlet, one case, and on to a collective action. It is 2013 and not 1963, when the nation was still apartheid and Dr. King journeyed to the Lincoln Memorial and gave his I Have a Dream speech. But it was more than I Have a Dream. It was a job speech, demanding jobs and equality within the society, economic equality. Many people confuse that with social equality, but he was talking about economic equality. We have obviously not reached that, nor have women reached that, but demands have to be made. If demands are not made, you go nowhere. But that requires action. So you can make a demand, but you have to have action. You have to march. You have to boycott. You have to partition. And we also look today at Anna Ann Swartz. He was able to get a petition to stop censorship of the Internet, at least temporarily. Those things can be done. We have to organize. President Obama's new grassroots organized PAC, our organization, is now out there. It's a predecessor of Organize for America, Organize for Action. Action is the key word. As the progressive Van Jones said, a mistake was made by some progressives in not taking on the Tea Party. That will not be repeated. We'll now take on the Tea Party and any other organization, the NRA, that stands in the way. From Seattle in Washington State over to Montana, down to Los Angeles, to Denver, to New Mexico, to Chicago, where 500 plus people were killed last year because of guns, on to St. Louis, and points in between in Cleveland where people stood in long lines, down in Pensacola, Florida, down in Sanford, Florida, where Trayvon Martin was gunned down, murdered, shot in the back. Those things just cannot be happen in a vacuum. People have to talk about them. People have to take action, go on Facebook, go various other places, but they cannot just talk about them at a barbershop and not do anything about it. Join the NAACP. Send money to progressive organizations. Volunteer in progressive organizations. Those are the kinds of action things that actually have to be done. The conservatives have that down. They volunteer. They go into their various right-wing organizations like the Tea Party. They listen to Fox News. They stay tuned with right-wing Erickson and his red state operation. They have their think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, etc. They have put literally billions of dollars into this. They can talk about individual activity if they want, but they are using collective might of dollars, collective might of people to try to maintain the status quo. Now, there's a difference there. They laughed at people when we talked about hope and change. They thought it was literally something that was idealistic. It was not. It was to have hope and to actually have action for change. Therefore, we now have the first national health care program. That effort started with Harry S. Truman and to Lyndon Johnson and various others, even Tricky Dick Nixon, but President Obama delivered on that. Now, that is a different situation. The day of the conservatives laughing has ended, but what did they do? They formed the birther movement. They used their various newspapers, including Monopoly Press, etc. When they refer to President Obama, they just say Obama. That is to downgrade the office. Willard Romney went around talking about his house, his plane, like he was literally the cleaner there. But nonetheless, he's still in the house. He's still got the plane, and he was on the platform at the Capitol today. But they are still trying there. When the birther movement fell flat and they were turned into buffoons, they continued on. What do you remember about these people? They are true believers. They have no sense of loss of history. If they lose a fight, they are like the Confederates in the Civil War. They still continue to propagandize behind it. It's a losing cause. A loser never quits. Now, some people assume that a loser quits. No, that's not true. It will continue to be a loser. Same thing with climate change. They talk about it not being scientific, etc. And so science has left them behind, and they are still out there. They are wailing about vaccinations and various other things. But the problem is the world is in a dynamic state. It's not in a static state. The world is changing on them. And many of these people even dream of the Fourth Reich, fascism across Europe, fascism here in America, fascism there, based upon some form of white supremacy. Well, yes, that is out there, and they are out there, but they are being combated every day with globalization, and they know that they cannot stand up with that type of program against 1 billion plus Chinese, 1 billion plus people in India. In all of the developing world where the markets are, they cannot stand there. So where do they look? Little pockets in Europe, pockets here in places like Mississippi and places like Chicago and other places. But their days are numbered thanks to structural changes in capitalism. So we've added a few words of voice to this dynamic day. And it is a dynamic day that we live in history, that we celebrate an African American from Atlanta, Georgia. And an African American born in Hawaii set up his political business in the windy city of Chicago, one of the most segregated cities in America, and at the same time the murder capital as far as African youth is concerned. But something positive came out of this day. It came from Chicago. It came from Atlanta, Georgia. The struggle continues on, and now it is presented to the world, as we are attempting to do here. This is Boston Red for Beyond the World on the 22nd day of January 2013. Good day, and as the Poet Laureate of Newark, New Jersey in the U.S. would say, one L.A. Bill Graham that hails from South Central Los Angeles. Peace out.
President many times.
Oh, beautiful, for spacious sky, for amber waves of grain, for purple
vineyard.
Great privilege and distinct honor to introduce the 44th President of the United States of America, Barack H. Obama.
Vice President Biden, Mr. Chief Justice, members of the United States Congress, distinguished guests, and fellow citizens. Each time we gather to inaugurate a president, we bear witness to the enduring strength of our Constitution. We affirm the promise of our democracy. We recall that what binds this nation together is not the colors of our skin, or the tenets of our faith, or the origins of our names. What makes us exceptional, what makes us American, is our allegiance to an idea articulated in a declaration made more than 2 centuries ago. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, we continue a never-ending journey to bridge the meaning of those words with the realities of our time. For history tells us that while these truths may be self-evident, they've never been self-executing. That while freedom is a gift from God, it must be secured by His people here on earth. The patriots of 1776 did not fight to replace the tyranny of a king with the privileges of a few or the rule of a mob. They gave to us a republic, a government of and by and for the people, entrusting each generation to keep safe our founding creed. For more than 200 years we have. Through blood drawn by lash and blood drawn by sword, we learned that no union founded on the principles of liberty and equality could survive half slave and half free. We made ourselves anew and vowed to move forward together. Together we determined that a modern economy requires railroads and highways to speed travel and commerce, schools and colleges to train our workers. Together we discovered that a free market only thrives when there are rules to ensure competition and fair play. Together we resolved that a great nation must care for the vulnerable and protect its people from life's worst hazards and misfortune. Through it all, we have never relinquished our skepticism of central authority, nor have we succumbed to the fiction that all society's ills can be cured through government alone. Our celebration of initiative and enterprise, our insistence on hard work and personal responsibility, these are constants in our character. We have always understood that when times change, so must we. that fidelity to our founding principles requires new responses to new challenges, that preserving our individual freedoms ultimately requires collective action. For the American people can no more meet the demands of today's world by acting alone than American soldiers could have met the forces of fascism or communism with muskets and militias. No single person can train all the math and science teachers we'll need to equip our children for the future, or build the roads and networks and research labs that will bring new jobs and businesses to our shores. Now, more than ever, we must do these things together, as one nation and one people. This generation of Americans has been tested by crises that steeled our resolve and proved our resilience. The decade of war is now ending. An economic recovery has begun. America's possibilities are limitless, for we possess all the qualities that this world without boundaries demands: youth and drive, diversity and openness, an endless capacity for risk, and a gift for reinvention. My fellow Americans, we are made for this moment, and we will seize it so long as we seize it together. For we, the people, understand that our country cannot succeed when a shrinking few do very well and a growing many barely make it. We believe that America's prosperity must rest upon the broad shoulders of a rising middle class. We know that America thrives when every person can find independence and pride in their work, when the wages of honest labor liberate families from the brink of hardship. We are true to our creed when a little girl born into the bleakest poverty knows that she has the same chance to succeed as anybody else because she is an American, she is free, and she is equal not just in the eyes of God, but also in our own. We understand that outworn programs are inadequate to the needs of our time. So we must harness new ideas and technology to remake our government, revamp our tax code, reform our schools, and empower our citizens with the skills they need to work harder, learn more, reach higher. But while the means will change, our purpose endures. A nation that rewards the effort and determination of every single American. That is what this moment requires. That is what will give real meaning to our creed. We, the people, still believe that every citizen deserves a basic measure of security and dignity. We must make the hard choices to reduce the cost of health care and the size of our deficit. But we reject the belief that America must choose between caring for the generation that built this country and investing in the generation that will build its future. For we remember the lessons of our past, when twilight years were spent in poverty and parents of a child with a disability had nowhere to turn. We do not believe that in this country freedom is reserved for the lucky or happiness for the few. We recognize that no matter how responsibly we live our lives, any one of us, at any time, may face a job loss or a sudden illness or a home swept away in a terrible storm. The commitments we make to each other through Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, these things do not sap our initiative, they strengthen us. They do not make us a nation of takers, they free us to take the risks that make this country great. We, the people, still believe that our obligations as Americans are not just to ourselves, but to all posterity. We will respond to the threat of climate change, knowing that the failure to do so would betray our children and future generations. Some may still deny the overwhelming judgment of science, but none can avoid the devastating impact of raging fires and crippling drought and more powerful storms. The path toward sustainable energy sources will be long and sometimes difficult. But America cannot resist this transition. We must lead it. We cannot cede to other nations the technology that will power new jobs and new industries. We must claim its promise. That's how we will maintain our economic vitality and our national treasure. Our forests and waterways, our croplands and snow-capped peaks. That is how we will preserve our planet, commanded to our care by God. That's what will lend meaning to the creed our fathers once declared. We, the people, still believe that enduring security and lasting peace do not require perpetual war. Our brave men and women in uniform, tempered by the flames of battle, are unmatched in skill and courage. Our citizens, seared by the memory of those we have lost, know too well the price that is paid for liberty. The knowledge of their sacrifice will keep us forever vigilant against those who would do us harm. But we are also heirs to those who won the peace and not just the war, who turned sworn enemies into the surest of friends, and we must carry those lessons into this time as well. We will defend our people and uphold our values through strength of arms and the rule of law. We will show the courage to try and resolve our differences with other nations peacefully, not because we are naive about the dangers we face, but because engagement can more durably lift suspicion and fear. America will remain the anchor of strong alliances in every corner of the globe. We will renew those institutions that extend our capacity to manage crisis abroad. For no one has a greater stake in a peaceful world than its most powerful nation. We will support democracy from Asia to Africa, from the Americas to the Middle East, because our interests and our conscience compel us to act on behalf of those who long for freedom. And we must be a source of hope to the poor, the sick, the marginalized, the victims of prejudice, not out of mere charity, but because peace in our time requires the constant advance of those principles that our common creed describes: tolerance and opportunity, human dignity, and justice. We, the people, declare today that the most evident of truths, that all of us are created equal, is the star that guides us still. Just as it guided our forebears through Seneca Falls and Selma and Stonewall, just as it guided all those men and women, sung and unsung, who left footprints along this great mall, to hear a preacher say that we cannot walk alone, to hear a king proclaim that our individual freedom is inextricably bound to the freedom of every soul on earth. It is now our generation's task to carry on what those pioneers began. For our journey is not complete until our wives, our mothers, and daughters can earn a living equal to their efforts. Our journey is not complete until our gay brothers and sisters are treated like anyone else under the law. For if we are truly created equal, then surely the love we commit to one another must be equal as well. Our journey is not complete until no citizen is forced to wait for hours to exercise the right to vote. Our journey is not complete until we find a better way to welcome the striving, hopeful immigrants who still see America as a land of opportunity. Until bright young students and engineers are enlisted in our workforce rather than expelled from our country. Our journey is not complete until all our children, from the streets of Detroit to the hills of Appalachia to the quiet lanes of Newtown, know that they are cared for and cherished and always safe from harm. That is our generation's task, to make these words, these rights, these values of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness real for every American. Being true to our founding documents does not require us to agree on every contour of life. It does not mean we all define liberty in exactly the same way or follow the same precise path to happiness. Progress does not compel us to settle centuries-long debates about the role of government for all time, but it does require us to act in our time. For now, decisions are upon us, and we cannot afford delay. We cannot mistake absolutism for principle, or substitute spectacle for politics, or treat name-calling as reasoned debate. We must act. We must act knowing that our work will be imperfect. We must act knowing that today's victories will be only partial, and that it will be up to those who stand here in 4 years, and 40 years, and 400 years hence to advance the timeless spirit once conferred to us in a spare Philadelphia hall. My fellow Americans, the oath I have sworn before you today, like the one recited by others who serve in this Capitol, was an oath to God and country, not party or faction. And we must faithfully execute that pledge during the duration of our service. But the words I spoke today are not so different from the oath that is taken each time a soldier signs up for duty, or an immigrant realizes her dream. My oath is not so different from the pledge we all make to the flag that waves above and that fills our hearts with pride. They are the words of citizens, and they represent our greatest hope. You and I, as citizens, have the power to set this country's course. You and I, as citizens, have the obligation to shape the debates of our time, not only with the votes we cast, but with the voices we lift in defense of our most ancient values and enduring ideals. Let us, each of us now, embrace with solemn duty and awesome joy what is our lasting birthright. With common effort and common purpose, with passion and dedication, let us answer the call of history and carry into an uncertain future that precious light of freedom. Thank you, God bless you, and may He forever bless these United States of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the singing of our national anthem by award-winning artist Beyonce, accompanied by the U.S. Marine Band. Following the national anthem, please remain at your place while the presidential party exits the platform.